F1 has existed since 1970, and in the 73 years it's been a World Championship, there have been great drivers such as Fangio, Clark, Schumacher, Senna and Hamilton. Alongside these great drivers, there's been great drives, people cutting through the field after starting at the back or destroying the field by minutes, not seconds. So what are these best drives? Let's find out. The 1950s was a decade dominated by Juan Manuel Fangio, as one of his drives that's the best drive for the 1950s. The 1957 German Grand Prix was held at the Nürburgring, a 14-mile blast through the forest that was done 22 laps over the course of the race, and it would be this race where would see Fangio become a 5-time world champion. Fangio decided before the race that he would do a one-stop strategy due to the Ferraris doing a no-stop race. When he pitted, he was 30 seconds ahead of the next car, but the pit stop was a disaster. He landed up coming out 48 seconds behind the third-place driver Collins. The rest of the race was a masterclass, as he broke the fastest lap record 9 times, 7 of which in a row, and landed up beating his pole lap by a time of 8.2 seconds. He then passed Collins and Hawthorn, who he overtook on the grass. He crossed the line to take his 5th and final world title and his final win in F1. Now we have the 1960s, the era of new innovations such as the monocoque, the introduction of downforce and the beginning of F1 safety era, where Jackie Stewart began crusading for better safety of drivers. But one of the best drives of the decade came from Jim Clark at Monza. The year was 1967 and Jim Clark qualified on pole by 3/10. As the flag fell and the race started, Clark took the lead but then developed a puncture on lap 12, putting him an entire lap down. Over the course of the next 48 laps, Clark pushed on, took back the lap he lost whilst matching his pole lap in an effort to catch back up to the leader. On lap 60, he retook the lead and then appeared to have won, but on the 68th and last lap, he was struck by a lack of fuel and finished 23 seconds behind Surtees, who was the eventual winner. Clark managed to come back from a lap down 12 laps into a race and was only stopped due to a problem with his car from winning. Pretty impressive. The 1970s was the era of F1 leaving a dangerous blast through the forests or laps around public roads and beginning to race on purpose-built tracks, but one untamed beast still remained, the Nürburgring in Germany. This decade also had some amazing drives, and although this may not be one which will be remembered on the statistic front, it will be remembered for the driver's ability to go through hell and back and race once more. The 1976 German Grand Prix was in the midst of the 1976 title battle between James Hunt and Niki Lauda. After winning 5 of the first 10 races, Lauda was 23 points ahead of Hunt as F1 descended upon the Nürburgring for the German Grand Prix, where going into the race, Lauda was second on the grid, but the 14-mile circuit was much like Spa. It could be dry on one end of the track and soaks on the other. These changeable conditions led the drivers to start on wet tyres, but at the end of the first lap, much of the field pitted onto dry tyres, including Lauda. On his outlap, he spun at the Birkwork curve and crashed, causing his car to burst into flames. He was enveloped in fire and was rescued by his fellow competitors. He suffered severe burns on his head and toxic fumes damaged his lungs. The injuries were so grave, he was given the last rites by a priest. But then, 6 weeks later, Lauda returned to F1 to compete at the 1976 German Grand Prix, and he finished 4th. Although it may not be the best result, the recovery to drive in F1 after suffering such severe injuries and being on the verge of death is worthy of being the best drive from the 1970s. For the story, it is. Then the 1980s, this was the era of total excess. The cars, the drivers and the circuits were all mental, and so the best to ever grace the world of motorsport. This also applies to drives within this decade, and one of the best coming at the jewelling the F1 crown, Monaco. It is 1984 and F1 has rocked up to the Principality for the 6th round in the championship. Niki Lauda and Alain Prost were embroiled in a title battle, but the Monaco track could throw up some surprises, such as in 1982, proved when only the winner completed the full race distance. Prost took pole, but Lauda was back in 8th, but he was normally extremely fast in the race, but with Monaco being an oversized go-kart track, it looked to be hard for him to overtake. The race began, but the track was soaked, and this led to another surprise being thrown up. Naturally, the race was chaos, and there were drivers that had great races that day, but not all these drives will be remembered on statistic pages due to the race being cut short due to rain, with only 32 of the 76 laps completed. In those last few laps of the race, Ayrton Senna was gaining rapidly on the leader Prost, and on the last lap overtook him. Senna did this in the back of the grid Toleman and started 13th before nearly winning, but due to the race being red flagged, the result went back a lap. oddly, so he didn't get his first race win. But behind him, there was a Tyrrell rapidly approaching. It was Stefan Beloff who was gaining even quicker, who came from 20th and last on the grid to 3rd. The ability of Senna and Beloff to charge through the field in the wet, in the worst cars on the grid, has to be admired for being able to outperform the cars that they had in wet conditions, and for those two being the drivers who could have won the race had it been stopped a few laps later. Anyway, this is end of part 1 for the best drive from every decade. I'm breaking this video into 2 parts just to allow me to go a bit more in depth without the video being too long. Next time I'll be able to cover the 1990s up until the 2020s. Anyway, thanks for watching and I'll see you later.